What's the standard sins of people in the church? I would probably say that, like, it's not okay that it happens, but like it happens it happens regularly. Let's probably say premarital sex, definitely.
Yeah.
I'd say like potential spousal abuse, not necessarily physical, but like, neglecting a marriage or whatever. What I ask in this situation, and this is a genuine question, this is not a statement, but like the idea of take the plank out of your own eye before you take the little piece of
The speck out of your brother's
So
eye.
it's basically like, dude, you are a hypocrite. So what I'm not saying is, I'm not saying that I'm not condoning any type of like sin, but I'm also like, I feel like I'm condoning somewhat of maybe the church's response of like, dude, like, obviously we want to help someone out in a situation, but like, man, we got to get our stuff straight.
Well, but I think
What is it?
I
don't
agree
know.
with you on that, but it doesn't end there.
Right.
A lot of people use that message, how can you who have a plank in your eye see well enough to remove the speck out of your brother's eye?
Yes.
People use that as a means to always stay complacent and always stay, like you said, like, oh, we still got to get our crap together. We still got to get our crap together before we can talk about anybody or before we can help anybody. Because it's not about talking about somebody. It's not about bad-mouthing people and living so blameless that you have the right to bad-mouth people.
Yeah.
It's about examining yourself to a degree where you've finally gotten this closeness with God and God's standard that you can see clear enough to help your brother with their speck. Because it doesn't end with just, how dare you with a plank in your eye try to remove their speck. It goes on to say, first, remove the plank out of your own eye. Then you can see clearly enough to remove the speck from your brother's eye. So there is a call there to help your brother remove the sin stain, the issue they're going through, bearing their burden, and help them get closer to the plan God has for them.
Can you take that as sin is a constant state, so you will always have a plank in your eye? Or can you not take it that way?
I don't think you can. Because Jesus...
I don't think so either. I was just...
Right.
Yeah.
Jesus knew those words.
Yeah.
He knew how to say that. And he's always was very careful about what he said.
Yeah.
He didn't mince his words. And so for him to say, first do this, then do that, it means you can do it. And it means you should do it. You should examine yourself and live beyond reproach. Get that closeness with God. Remove yourself from sin. Like, get the sin away from you as far as possible. Like get it out of your life. And then once you've done that, once you've fasted and prayed and sought God, then you can be like, hey, let's talk. Come here. And then on it, the truth in that point to me is there'll be so much grace, I feel like, because when you've examined your own self and you've taken a good hard look at your own crap, you can't help but be gracious to somebody else. And the thing is, when you have worked through all that crap, when you've taken the steps to get close to God and remove the junk and the grime in your own life to get close to God, not only do you have compassion when you see somebody in a sinful state or in a sinful situation, you can be like, gosh, I was right there. I know that what you're dealing with, that kind of stuff. I know what it feels to hold on to these things that are counterintuitive to God's plan. But you also know what it took for you to crawl out of that and get out of that and get close to God.
So that's where the grace element comes in.
Yeah, so it's like not only the way you can help somebody is when you have fought through the crap yourself.
What about like the idea of like, what hill do we die on? So for instance, like, it's almost like the church in general, not Christianity, but church, has favorite sins. And I feel like this is potentially one of them, because it's like, oh, well, I don't struggle with that, so let's talk about that. And not that that's you.
Well,
that's not you. I'm not.
Well, no, like, I see it to be often legally, like, you're either crazy legalistic or you're extremely seeker friendly.
Yeah.
You got the people that are all grace and no truth, I feel like, and then you got people that are only the truth and no grace.
Those are the two.
And
those are really the only two denominations.
If I feel
really
like that, yeah. And somewhere between those two completely polar opposites is the line that you
Jesus.
can walk with Jesus and what he's getting, because John says he was full of grace and full of truth.
Yeah.
He was complete grace and complete truth at the same time. And so I do agree with you that we have more noticeable sins, but I honestly feel like the idea about what sin is totally misconstrued a lot.
It's
People think like
it's a thing. It's this and
people
this,
think
but not.
I had a bad thought. Oh, that's a sin. I'm like,
isn't sin? You know way more about this than I do. But isn't sin a state of being or a state of mind that you have Jesus and Jesus covers you from that?
well, this is a theological. This is starting to get theological, but
Yeah. Well, it's hard to talk about anything pride without that.
So, sin is you're born into sin with a sinful nature. And then the idea is that the entire planet's cloaked in the sin curse. So we're born into sin. But the thing about Jesus, when he paid the punishment for your sin, the punishment for sin is death and hell. Like, that's punishment for sin.
Yeah.
And Jesus paid that. So you can either pay, and I heard this example from a minister. You can either pay the wage for your own sin, for all the bad things you've done. You can pay for it with eternity in hell, or you can accept Jesus' payment for it. That's the plan. Like he already paid for it, and you can either say, okay, I'm going to accept his payment for it. I'm going to believe in him and serve him. But to believe in him and serve him, Jesus said, he that loves me, or to love God is he that loves me will do my commandments. And no greater commandment do I have than these: love God with all your heart, soul, and mind, and love your neighbor as yourself. He who loves God will do his commandments. That's also, if you love God, do his commandments. So there is a standard to live by. The problem is, I think people excuse a lot of sin because they say, well, I've got a lot of different sin, man. I had some selfish thoughts today. And I'm like, so? Show me in the Bible where you have, in New Testament with Jesus, who has a selfish thought has committed sin against God. Yeah. The idea of what sin actually is, the action of sin is, in my opinion, totally misconstrued. And when you accept Jesus, the Bible's plain, it says you are born again. So even if you were born with a sinful nature, accepting Jesus means you're born again in what Peter calls a divine nature, a nature that desires to do godly things. It doesn't mean you can't still screw up, because you do. You can still sin, but it's your desire is changed.
Well, and this is kind of where we get into, like, with the Bible and Christianity and the gospel. It's like, this is where you get into the more offensive and hard part, It's not just, like, Jesus is here to be your best friend. It's like calling to something higher. And that's where I have so much compassion, but it's almost like hard for me to talk about sometimes, because it's like I've got this joke in my comedy routine. It's like the first thing I do is I walk on stage and I say, ever since I was a little boy, I only ever play with Barbie dolls. That's the joke. And it doesn't go anywhere else but there. But this idea that I know people with that story, it doesn't change, like, I guess what I would call truth, but it's like I definitely want to have, like, compassion, because for me, like, I know a lot of people that don't deal with, like, the mad anxiety and depression and whatever. And I don't want to say those are the same, but it's like, man, we all gotta struggle, and it's just hard to talk about sometimes,
You guys are awesome, and keep being awesome, because that's how he made you.